Hey everybody, Joe Joseph here for thedailysheeple.com, and this is your news shot. So to the National Review I go, and I'm going back to a December 2nd, 2013 article by Stephen Halbrook. And I think that this is one of those timeless articles that we can always go back to, because we have to use history as our guide going forward. In this case, they highlight how the Nazis used gun control. And this is a very, very important story to tell, because this is how entities like the Nazi Party gain power in countries like the United States. So Stephen writes, the Weimar Republic well-intentioned gun registry became a tool for evil. The perennial gun control debate in America did not begin here. The same arguments for and against were made in the 1920s in the chaos of Germany's Weimar Republic, which opted for gun registration. Law-abiding persons complied with the law, but the communists and Nazis committed acts of political violence. They didn't. In 1931, Weimar authorities discovered plans for a Nazi takeover in which Jews would be denied food and persons refusing to surrender their guns within 24 hours. Why, they would be executed. They were written by Werner Brest, a future Gestapo official. In reaction to such threats, the government authorized the registration of all firearms and the confiscation thereof, if required for, quote, public safety. The Interior Minister warned that the records must not fall into the hands of any extremist group. Sound familiar? This kills me. In 1933, the ultimate extremist group led by Adolf Hitler seized power and used the records to identify, disarm, and attack political opponents and Jews. Constitutional rights, why, they were suspended. And mass searches for and seizures of guns and dissidents' publications, why, that ensued. Then police revoked gun licenses of Social Democrats and others who were not, quote, politically reliable. During the 5 years of repression that followed, society was cleansed by the National Socialists. Undesirables were placed in camps where labor made them, quote, free, and normal rights of citizenship were taken away from Jews. The Gestapo banned independent gun clubs and arrested their leaders. Gestapo counsel Werner Best issued a directive to the police forbidding issuance of firearm permits to Jews. Then in 1938, Hitler signed a new gun control act. Now that many, quote, enemies of the state had been removed from society, some restrictions could be slightly liberalized, especially for Nazi Party members. But Jews were prohibited from working in the firearm industry, and .22 caliber hollow point ammunition was banned. Now the time had come to launch a decisive blow to the Jewish community to render it defenseless so that its ill-gotten property could be redistributed as an entitlement to German Volk. The German Jews were ordered to surrender all their weapons, and the police had the records on all who had registered them. Even those who gave up their weapons voluntarily were turned over to the Gestapo. This took place in the weeks before what became known as the Night of Broken Glass, or Kristallnacht, and that occurred in November 1938. That the Jews were disarmed before it, minimizing any risk of resistance, is the strongest evidence who gave up their weapons voluntarily were turned over to the Gestapo. Now, this took place in the weeks before what became known as that. This is huge, as the Night of Broken Glass. You have to understand that that is the road to hell is paved by good intentions. You know, that incident would be the shooting of a German diplomat. These incidents that happen, they clung to them, right? So what happens? You get somebody that gets pissed off or wants to fight back. And in this case, there was an incident that was basically used to justify unleashing this attack, this night of broken glass. That incident was the shooting of a German diplomat in Paris by a teenage Polish Jew. Hitler directed Joseph Goebbels himself to orchestrate the night of broken glass. And this massive operation, allegedly conducted as a weapons search, also entailed the ransacking of homes and businesses and the burning of synagogues. And Heinrich Himmler, you may know that name, that's the SS chief, decreed that 20 years be served in a concentration camp by any Jew possessing firearms. Rusty revolvers and bayonets from the Great War were confiscated from Jewish veterans who had served with distinction. 20,000 Jewish men were thrown into concentration camps and had to pay ransoms to get released. The U.S. media coverage, they actually covered the events. And when France fell to the Nazi invasion in 1940, the New York Times reported that the French were deprived of rights such as free speech and firearm possessions, just as the Germans had been. Frenchmen who'd failed to surrender their firearms within 24 hours were subject to the death penalty. So no wonder that in 1941, just days before the Pearl Harbor attack, Congress reaffirmed Second Amendment rights and prohibited gun registration. In 1968, bills to register guns were debated, with opponents recalling the Nazi experience and supporters denying that Nazis ever used registration records to confiscate guns. The bills were defeated, as every such proposal has been ever since, including the recent couple years back universal background check bill. So, what's the moral of the story, folks? The moral of the story is, just as in Weimar, Germany, some well-meaning people today advocate severe restrictions, including bans and registrations on gun ownership by law-abiding persons. Such proponents are in no sense Nazis, any more than were the Weimar officials who promoted similar restrictions. And it would be a travesty to compare today's situation to the horrors of Nazi Germany. Still, as history teaches, the road to hell is paved by good intentions. And folks, this is what's so important to learn. You could have the best intentions at heart, but these freedoms, the Second Amendment was put in place not for self-defense, not for sports or hunting or anything else, but specifically to defend ourselves against a government that's gone rogue. And that's exactly what Nazi Germany was. And that's exactly what the people could not do. They could not stand up to the National Socialists and Adolf Hitler. They couldn't do it because they all gave their guns up. And a decade before, they all basically registered and signed up for concentration camps. And they didn't even know it. Because everybody was the best, they were well-intentioned. We're just following the law. Isn't it interesting how simply, really, it's simple, how simple it is to take advantage of a database like that. That's why I have such animosity for no-fly lists, for terrorist watch lists, for all of these different lists that we're on, because, folks, it can be turned against you in a heartbeat. And you got to remember also that in 1941, there was no Buffdale, Utah. There was no NSA database. There was no ability to put your life on a timeline and flay it out and see everything you've bought, everything you've written, everything you've said, all the video, all of it, your whole life now captured by the NSA. I mean, it takes this to a whole new level. And if you don't think that this can come to America, you're sadly mistaken. Because people like George Soros want this more than anything in the world. They want control. They want control over you. And they want the world the way they want it. And they don't want you in it. It's that simple. So, do some research. Weimar, gun confiscation. And even more importantly, do research on all of the things that have happened, all the databases that have been created that could easily be taken advantage of by those with means. And also research who it was that was pivotal to put Hitler in power. Because when you do some research into that, you come to find some very powerful American families were very active in giving Hitler support during World War II and even before. I'm Joe Joseph. This was thedailysheeple.com's News Shot. Feel free to comment below and visit our website at thedailysheeple.com. Hashtag wake the flock up. Have a great day.